We're rolling? Okay, cool. We're good. We live. Hello.
Hey, Katigane.
How are you?
I'm good.
I'm good. Do you want to introduce yourself or must I?
I can introduce myself, yeah.
Please.
My name is Ntombenhle Khathwane. I'm the founder of a company called Afrobotanics. We manufacture natural hair, body, baby products, and we sell them through the major retailers in South Africa.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you and I met, I was following your brand before I got to meet you. Mm-hmm. So like I met you as a bit of a fan. We met when I was at Clicks doing enterprise development there. And I kind of got to see a little bit behind the business as opposed to just seeing the front side of things. What has your journey been like to someone who's maybe been watching it from the outside and hasn't quite seen the behind the details? Like what's that journey been like for you from inception of your brand to now you're sitting on the shelves of a large retailer like Clicks?
Hectic and chaotic.
Yeah.
I did write a business plan obviously I was trying to raise funding from the beginning when I started in 2011. But the business plan has never gone as planned. So it's been hectic and chaotic. It's been a constant learning curve. Yeah. It's a passion project of mine, and it speaks to what I call is my purpose. Yeah. It's been an interesting journey going from, I studied politics and I worked in the development space. I worked in government before going into business, which was a completely new space. And so I had to completely learn what business is. But specifically in South Africa, we don't have enough content. Well, at the time anyway, there wasn't enough information around how retail works. And so for me, it's been a long, hard, and a lot of school fees paid in trying to build a brand and products that are sold through retail. Yeah.
Okay, it's quite interesting the business plan aspect of it. Like for a lot of entrepreneurs, we kind of get told, have a business plan. From my experience, the first time I went into business, having sat on a business plan that I worked on for a good 5 years, and then day one throwing it out. Yeah. Like, what would you say for you was the biggest lesson in terms of going from having an idea to actually executing?
Well, for me, it was just getting it done. Yeah. So I've never been someone who waits on anyone to give me permission or to enable me. So I had started on working on the formulations, packaging, branding, and I think I already had products because I worked with a formulator, what do you call them? The people that you outsource manufacturing and formulation to. Yeah. I'd worked with those and I had the branding and product created. I didn't want to wait for a situation where I can afford to have 10,000 products before I start the business. So for me, it was about bootstrapping and just getting it going and getting the feel for the market. Yes. 2011, 2012 was a tricky time because I think Facebook was just gaining traction. We had websites, but they weren't the most optimal of websites. So reaching people in terms of marketing was not as easy as it is now. Yeah. But for me, it was about getting going. And I think, business plans are a privilege for those who actually have the money at the beginning. So if you have the money, it's easy to say, this is the business plan, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. It makes sense then. Yeah. But for those of us who really have to bootstrap it through, it's not as simple. Yeah.
I love that. And I love the just get it done.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because as you were explaining it to me now, like I was having flashbacks to all of the proposals that we were getting from entrepreneurs trying to get their stuff on shelf. And the number of people that come with a theoretical product, like, is scary. Where a person has got, like, I've still got an idea or I've got a concept, here's a PowerPoint. And you'll find it's something they've been sitting on for a year. Whereas what you've described as a process has kind of been like, okay, cool, I want to get a product on shelf. In order to get a product, there must be a formulation, there must be packaging. and you get it done. Like, what's been your approach to that, and what have you found works well in terms of that forward momentum, and what do you find are the things that end up being a roadblock to you having that forward momentum?
You know, I like that you're using the word momentum, because it's something that actually I've been thinking about and writing about in the past few weeks, especially in relation to, you know, getting stuck or getting depressed. When you keep going and you're moving, somehow when you're taking action, you feel better. So for me, it was always about getting going, and people learning that. I think what really helped me was seeing, after working in government, one of the things that really pained me was seeing how a lot of our people were waiting for government to make things happen for them, to enable them through creation of jobs, through housing or whatever. They were waiting. And for me, though I was seeing the environment, I was like, there's so many opportunities to go out and get them.
Yeah.
And it took me from 2011 to 2015 to get my product on shelf. And so in that time, there were lots of ups and downs, times when I started doubting myself, doubting my vision, my idea. But the fact that I was moving, I had a website, I had Facebook, and at the time, there was the first wave of what we call now influencers. The people who were talking about natural hair products, and since I was one of the first brands that they were able to access, especially targeting our kind of hair in South Africa, they really helped me a lot. And just moving, going into spaces, like I remember my major break point, I would say, in terms of just creating awareness about my existence of, the existence of Afrobotanics was, I was here in Joburg already, because I left Nelspruit, where I had originally, where I'm from, and I had originally started the business. And my sister, I saw in the magazine that Kanye Dlomo was taking her entrepreneurial business workshop to Nelspruit at the time for Destiny magazine. And I was like to my sister, who was still in Nelspruit, sis, please take these products, my products, and give them to Kanye Dlomo, and tell her to try them out. If she likes them, she can talk about them in her magazine. And lo and behold, a few months later, they were my products. And I think continuously for a year or so, I'd see my products, and the website was there. People were starting to buy on the website. And I started going to also, different markets, pop-ups, and the influencers that were trying to teach people about natural hair were holding events where I could also go and sell and just create awareness. So yeah, that is how it started. And it also helped me be able to build a business case for the retailers, because obviously I started approaching all retailers from day one, and all of them were like, no, black women are not ready for natural hair. They still want to relax their hair. 1, 2, black women are not prepared to pay more than 30 Rand a bottle of product, obviously because natural products are more expensive. Black women don't care about quality, they care about price. All things that we then eventually went on to disprove.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think an advantage for me as well with that, Kategani, is that I was a black woman, and I was basically creating that which I knew I wanted, and therefore I could assume that a lot of other women would resonate with that.
Yeah. That's such a critical thing when you're in business. I keep hearing it time and time again. Yes, you do sometimes need to step out of the situation and not personalize things too much, but there's so much to be said for creating something that you want in the market, right? Like it creating via that point of view is the thing that I think helps you to kind of keep the course, right? Where things do get tough and you're getting a lot of no's and a lot of rejections, having that thing of, but I want this thing, right? Like I want to see this thing staying alive, I think is such an important thing.
Absolutely.
I think another important thing that you mentioned is like you started off in a time and a place where perceptions about the industry were one way. You identified that those perceptions weren't necessarily accurate. And you started your business, and simultaneously, fortunately, and partially through some of the work that you were doing, there was a wave or a movement that got created where it's like, actually, we need to move away from these misconceptions and this is the actual reality. And I think that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that helped quite significantly in terms of getting your brand and your product to where it needed to be, because you were there, you were ready, you were good to go when that wave actually started to pick up that momentum.
Yeah, timing was everything for me. And being a first mover, it really gave me that advantage. And I think being a first mover gave me access to the market through like getting to retail. Had I maybe entered the market, let's say 5 years later, when there were already other people, I wouldn't have had the opportunity, because then there would have been, the space would have been taken up, and I didn't have the resources. Because going into retail, you need a lot of resources.
That's a conversation that I will come back to, because I think like it's a critical conversation that we need to have. The first question I want to ask, though, leading into that is, with that changing of that wave, like what are some of the things you mentioned, the influencers and the social media marketing, like what are some of the things that you did in order to get Afrobotanics at the forefront of the conversation to really take advantage of that wave?
So our focus was on education. A lot of us, because of our broken history, a lot of things that were naturally passed down through community, mother and daughter, grandmother and granddaughter, were no longer the case, such as personal care. So for me, hair care is about personal care, not necessarily cosmetics or beauty as people like to categorize it. And so I went back to the basics of educating people, understanding the science of hair, why our hair is different, what it needs, just those basic things. Because even till today, I mean, it's something that we take for granted, but we have to still educate people, because even a lot of our hairstylists, I mean, the country, they say what, we've got over 25,000 black hair salons, and most of the stylists are not educated in a school where they understand the science of hair. So it's important that you empower the consumer, so that at least the consumer can ask the stylists and direct the stylists how to take care of their hair. So our focus was a lot on educating people, the step-by-step on how to take care of their hair using our products. I think that was an important thing. Our products were also affordable, accessible, and we were able to teach them. And it also was a time where a lot of mothers wanted to raise their kids and to stay natural. So a lot of our customers came from that as well. So that's what gave us a huge advantage at the time.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned the driving education with consumers being affordable, which I think speaks more to like being value for money at whatever price point you're at, and then also the accessibility, which is essentially the distribution that you're working on. Are there any other key pillars that you would call out as like these 2 or 3 things were really pivotal in terms of you getting to the success that you're at now?
I think people were just excited to see someone like them, because at that time, our hair care category in South Africa was dominated by international brands, and then brands owned by people don't know, like the Amcas of the world, or the Revlons, the Unilevers of the world. I think people like myself were a symbol of hope, and we were able to drive conversations that people were wanting to have. And I think it was really an exciting time at the time when my business emerged, and we were having the conversation around what it takes to be a black woman and what it takes to build a business. So it was a very exciting time, I think.
Okay, cool. So I think let's switch gears a little bit and go back to that conversation around the ecosystem as a whole, right? So there's obviously the excitement of like you're one of the first young black female entrepreneurs in the space, and getting real traction in an environment which previously doesn't have people like you and I having leading brands in whatever categories. Like, what was that process like for you? What were some of the high points, or were some of the low points?
I think it was a really challenging time because I can't, I was actually thinking, as I was preparing to come here, I was thinking about how little has changed in that it's still a very white dominated, retail still very white dominated, manufacturing still very white dominated, or let's say non-black dominated. And I can't count the number of times I cried because I was rejected. And it's and for me it's still a tragedy when I look at the fact that when I walk into a shelf space, whether I'm looking at in a ShopRite or in a Spar or in a Clicks, that the majority of those products don't even come from South Africa, right? So that's a very sore point for me. I think inadvertently as an entrepreneur you become an activist, whether you like it or not, because if you're being honest, you see how unfair things are, how unequal things are, and it's something that we still have to navigate. And I think that also I feel responsible having to navigate it and open up for more people, because it doesn't make sense to keep an economy small. It doesn't serve corporates either. This is what I say, that if the corporates that were keeping us out knew, or who were not supporting us knew, that it actually makes more sense for them to open up the economy, to ensure that more people are active in the economy, because then more money, they're able to get more money. Right now they're trying to squeeze out as much money as they can from a few people. But if they empowered manufacturers like myself, and gave more business to manufacturers like myself, and we created more manufacturers, more people will be employed and more people can buy, So it's a mindset I think that a lot of corporates still have to catch up on. They still caught up on how to make as much profit as they can on the few, instead of how do we also then, in a sustainable way, for sustainability, also ensure that the economy is producing more people who can buy from us. I hate being so. I used to think that I also want to focus a lot on profit. I want to be the biggest. But I've gone out of that now.
We still good. Okay, cool. So like I completely echo that sentiment in terms of like the way the ecosystem is currently, long term is gonna screw the country over, because what's happening now is that the bulk of the products that are sitting on shelf aren't owned by companies that are paying taxes here, right? So essentially what that means is that Katakani has $100, he goes to retailer X, spends that $100, 70 to 80% of that is gone.
Right? And I don't understand how South African retailer is okay with that.
And it's creating a scenario where literally next time I come, I've got $20 to spend. Next time I come, I've got $5. And it makes the pool smaller and smaller. Whereas if we are being more intentional, corporate, government, and also us as society, because we've got that responsibility as well, right? If we are being more intentional about making sure that we are building homegrown businesses, what that does is now those funds get to circulate in the economy. Right? And that's looking at that full end-to-end value chain, where we're talking everything from owning the brand, manufacturing, to now actually retailing it. Like it's one of those where there's a couple of corporate leaders that are starting to open their eyes to it, but there are one or two that I've interacted with. But I really hope, like, as time goes, more of them open their eyes to that, because if not, we like in a very quick foot race to the bottom, and it's going to be a struggle. I would
urge them to look at it as a priority if they are looking and understanding what's going on globally. They haven't, if they were to look at their profits, they haven't even begun to really enjoy what South Africa has to offer. It's just that they have to play their part. It's I think we have a very parasitic and a very there's the other word that starts with the P, type of corporate and financial environment in South Africa, and that needs to change to one where there's more care, and the care can still be very selfward, inward looking, knowing that by investing outwardly, you'll reap benefits and profits for a longer period and more of them.
Yeah.
But this thing of still trying to keep ownership and milk things the way we've done is not sustainable. Yeah.
Definitely. So I think I want to come to the question of what are some of the things that corporates, and in your case particularly retail, could be doing to better support young Black-owned local SMEs. But before I get to that question, I think a question that I'd like to ask of you is, as a person who's looking at starting a business, or you've started a business and you're trying to get a foot in the door with some of these larger corporates, what are some of the things that you can do to set yourself up to make sure that when the opportunity does present itself, when someone says, okay, cool, I'll take a meeting with you, what are the things that you need to have done to make sure that you're ready to actually take advantage of the opportunity should it arise?
Well, you need to study each retailer or corporate partner that you are going to approach to understand what their priorities are. So, for example, in my space, Eclipse is one that is willing to try new things, to pioneer in the spaces. Whereas my interaction with Discam has been one where they want to more play it safe. They want to work and do the things that they know work. They're not too eager to try new things that have not been tested. So you need to understand that, because then depending what your product is, let's say your product is a revolutionary or something that's forward thinking, then you'd want to take it to a retailer who's more open and understanding of that. Also understand that a lot of the times what happens is that the people that you're going to be meeting are under pressure, they're under strain, they want to know how they're going to make more money, how they're going to attract more customers, a different customer, for example, into their stores. So you need to be able to speak to that, and which means that you don't want to bring something that's already on their shelf or something that's being marketed in their shelf the same way. So you want to bring them something new, but not too new, depending on who they are, and you want to be able to help them make more money. That's the thing that they look at. But also you have to be able to speak to things like how are you going to be able to meet the demand? If ShopRite takes you on and they're saying we're putting you in 1,000 stores, will you be able to produce the product for 1,000 stores and only get paid 3 months after you've made your first delivery? So those are the kind of considerations that you must already have thought of, so that the buyer is comfortable bringing you into their store. Okay.
That's I think that's actually like such a critical point for like you as a small business, your readiness factor, right? Because I think everyone wants to like be on shelf. Everyone wants to have their product listed at Clicks, Pick and Pay, Checkers, etc. And everyone sees that as the big win. And they don't quite understand that, like, honestly, once you get that listing, that's like 1% of the work done. Now the real work starts. So like in terms of unpacking that a bit further, because I think to the point that you mentioned around the people that you're engaging with want to understand how you are going to benefit their bottom line at the end of the day. Like, what is the sort of work that needs to happen once you've managed to get your product on shelf to make sure that that product is moving?
Katekane, the one thing we have to realize is that, okay, I'm speaking about the retail space, but I think that's how it works in corporate, is that it's a very, the word I was looking for earlier was predatory. It's a very predatory space. The corporates are trying to make as much money as they can. So the one thing you know is that they make more money off of your product than you make. and they are in a very comfortable space, whereas you have to spend a lot of money in terms of marketing, and marketing in South Africa is not cheap. Is not easy. There was a point where it was easy to market due to social media, but also now there's such so saturated that in order for your voice to stand out on social media, you have to do amazing things, right? So there's a lot that you have to consider. Like, are you going to be able to stand out on shelf, as in people will want to go into a store looking for you? A lot of the time, understanding the psychology of a consumer, by the time most consumers go to a store, they've already made a decision what they're going to buy. Unless when they get to the store and they can't find what they're looking for, then they start to explore other options and they, consult friends and things like that. So how you market, I think the biggest thing is getting people aware and wanting to buy your product. And then there's so many other costs that are factored in. And I was speaking to another young entrepreneur that is doing haircare, and she was saying she's got a huge opportunity, but they're saying that, she can bring her product in and, put her in quite a few stores. But they only pay her in 90 days. And she's like, but then it means that I'm going to be giving them all the stock I currently have, and then I'll only be able to restock again after 90 days. So what happens if the product gets sold out sooner? So first of all, her customer base that she currently has online won't have access to product. And then those that, let's say they do buy it out in stores, it means that for another 2-3 months, she doesn't have stock, right? And she's not able to get funding at this time. So there's so many other considerations that, I always say to people that, with internet, how e-commerce is going, I think that a major consideration is really focusing on building your brand and then building some capital base by selling online before going into retail. Retail is very expensive. And, in South Africa, we have two types of retail. You've got the national chains, and then you've got the independents. And unfortunately, the independents should be easier for us to sell through, but it's more expensive. It's harder. You need to have people who are on the floor, on the ground, going to each one to sell your products, to get your products in there. So there's a lot to consider before your product is considered successful. Not even just ready, but successful, because I remember the first retailer to list us was Game. And the lady was like, I'm giving you 6 months. If your product doesn't sell in 6 months, then I'm delisting you. And she was like, look, there are brands we've delisted it. It's so hard for a brand to rebuild once it's been delisted in one retailer. And it shook me. So you need to, retail ready means, your marketing must be ready. You must have the money and the muscle to market. You must have the money and the money to even pay things like your merchandisers and things like that. So, for example, Clicks is very good in that you don't have to merchandise, but you have to merchandise at a Pick and Pay. And that's money. So there's a lot to consider before you can say, I'm retail ready and I'll make this a success.
No, it's actually one of the reasons why whenever I engage with entrepreneurs who are still starting out, even if they've got a bit of a track record and they're trying to get into one of the larger retailers, the guidance I always give is like, start with one of the online guys. Right? Like use that to get the bread and butter of your business going. Figure out how you are replenishing stock, making deliveries, doing your brand building, etc. Because like literally day one of your product sitting on shelf, it's expensive.
It's money.
It's money. There's rebates, there's delivery fees, there's stock that you have to make sure.
Warehousing.
It's insane.
Marketing, advertising.
It's insane. Like I had a chat with Skinny Spoo a couple of months ago, and I was saying like that thing that he said about that needing 5 million rand, like it's not a joke. For you as a brand that's looking to get into mainstream retail. So just to kind of get into the tail end of the conversation, like we've spoken about how an entrepreneur can make sure that they are ready when a conversation happens with a large corporate. What are things that large corporates can be doing to better welcome entrepreneurs, and this is coming from the perspective of, if you look at a lot of the infrastructure that's currently sitting in place in large corporate, especially corporate retailers, and some of the benefits that they offer, those things are typically tailored to other large corporates. So a P&G, a Unilever, Tiger Brands, they're fine with 90 or 120-day payment terms. When you're talking about the rebate structures, they are able to negotiate because they are doing such large volumes and turnover. For a small business that's doing like less than 20 million rand in turnover, those benefits don't necessarily reap the same sort of reward. So what would you say, having now experienced this journey, what are things that you wish retailers had done or should be doing now to make it a bit more accessible for you as a brand that's building bottom up?
So first of all, I think that they need to make it a company culture for everyone in their businesses to understand why it's important for us to nurture these small businesses. It benefits us long term, the longevity of the business. Yes, it might not necessarily benefit us in terms of, they might bring us 1% or 2% in terms of revenue in this year, but in future, the accumulation of these kind of businesses will be our bread and butter. So they need to change that, understand that, and teach that culture into all of their employees. Number two, I think that they need to support businesses like ours the way they support their own brands. So a lot of retailers have home brands, their own brands that are competing with ours. And they need to, I think that they would make it easier for us in terms of costs and for us to be more sustainable if they gave us the support that they give their own. So, because a lot of the time, even if they pay us sooner, there are retailers who pay us sooner, but they charge us a higher rate for a settlement fee. So it ends up eating into your money anyway. So yeah, like we were counting it last year to say that, a 2.5% settlement fee may seem small, but accumulatively it's quite a lot. So you might as well just leave it at the 90 days if you can. But that will kill you as a small business. I think that they need to look at cutting their, just recognizing that we need to invest 10 years in these businesses to get them, because we want to have many locally owned Tiger brands and help us grow, and not just also limit us to natural hair. Like I was having conversations with Clifton, I was saying, guys, the natural hair category has been small. It's actually shrinking again. I can't stay in that category. I need to go into body care. I need to go into baby. The same way that Unilever has so many products. I mean, I can't have 20 products and make it and grow when a Unilever has 5,000 products. It makes sense because it's a volumes game at the end of the day. So I think that they never actually even meet us. If I wish one of them would have a conference of our small retailers and hear what we really have to say and have to think about things. And I think that they need to really switch their mindset to see that helping businesses like ours is actually a long-term strategy that will benefit them in a big way in time.
Okay. And then just to wrap it up, a question I'd ask you: if you were to go back to 2012,
are you done?
1 minute. So if you were to go back to 2012, knowing what you know now, what are the 3 things that you do differently with your business?
So first of all, I think I was pushed into manufacturing. So I wouldn't go into manufacturing. I would still outsource the manufacturing and focus on brand building. And I would go into other categories sooner, not just do only hair care, but do the body and the baby and the other stuff that I do. And 3, I would look for an equity partner, like big money, like 30 million, 50 million rand type of investment, and not loan funding.
That makes sense. Ntombenhle, thank you so much for coming through. Really appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.